Members of Parliament, support staff, visitors in the public tribune, radio listeners, TV viewers, all those viewing this meeting via social media, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the continuation of this public meeting for today, Thursday, March 13th. This is public meeting number 7. At this time, I want to give a special word of welcome to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, Ms. Melissa Gums, and her entire support staff here this morning. We have established a quorum of 10 members, and I invite you to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the member York and notice of lateness from the member Kotai. Does any member of Parliament have the need for a notification at this time? I do see some members have indicated that, and I start with giving the floor to MP Duran. MP Duran, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair, colleagues, Minister, support staff, people of St. Martin. I'd like to give a notice of lateness for MP Irian, please.
Thank you, MP Duran, and well noted. I see the next member wishing to make use of notifications is MP La Cruz, to whom I give the floor at this time. MP La Cruz.
A blessed morning, Madam Chair Lady, to the Griffier, the Minister, her support staff, the elite in the Tribune, and my fellow colleagues. Madam Chair Lady, lateness for MP Hartley. Thank you.
Noted, MP La Cruz, that notice of lateness for MP Otley. Members, thank you for your notifications, and we now continue with the meeting for today. The agenda point for today's meeting is de Ontwerplandsverordening houdende regels inzake het hoger onderwijs en onderzoek, so-called Landsverordening hoger onderwijs. This document is registered here at Parliament on the IS number 431 of the parliamentary year 2022-2023 and is dated the 8th of February of 2023. In our draft national ordinances list, it is number 165 of the parliamentary year 22-23. This Ontwerplandsverordening could be translated into the draft national ordinance laying down rules on higher education and research. And the point in question, and this being a public meeting of Parliament, just a brief reminder to the members of Parliament that the possibility to make use of interruptions is there, and that the chairperson may permit this to take place, may permit the interruptions, and these interruptions should aim to 1, seek clarification, 2, challenge assertions or contribute additional information, and should consist of brief remarks without introduction. So we go over to agenda point number 3. And as I mentioned, this draft national ordinance was received on February the 8th of 2023. Of course, all members have access to copies of this draft ordinance. And as is required with all national ordinances, a central committee needed to be held, and that was done on August the 14th as well as October 26th of 2023. And during that time, members of Parliament posed their questions and the ministers answered these questions. Based on those deliberations in the Central Committee meeting, a report was made and sent to the government, and the government answered this report with a so-called note following the final report. This document, members of Parliament, is registered on the IS 265 of the parliamentary year 23-24, and it's dated December the 8th, 2023. The draft national ordinance before us was tabled in a public meeting on September the 5th of 2024, and members of parliament posed questions at that time in the first round. However, due to the fact that the composition of parliament changed on September the 20th of 2024, it was decided to restart the handling of this draft, and hence this meeting, which was initially called for November the 8th, 2024. I think it's also important to note that on September the 19th, 2024, Parliament received a nota van wijziging, a memorandum of modification from the government on this draft. And that document is registered on the IS 049 of the parliamentary year 24-25. That too is available to members of parliament. So at this time, after giving the introduction as to where we are in the handling of the draft National Ordinance Higher Education, I would now give the floor to the Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, Ms. Melissa Gomes, for her introductory remarks and, from what I see, a presentation. Minister Gomes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and good morning to you, Rifir, the members of Parliament, the representative of USM joining us in the Tribune, and those listening online. I am joined today, Madam Chair Lady, by my Secretary General, Shamina Powell-Richardson, Policy Advisor in my Cabinet, Erin Ellis, and Department Head of Education, Mrs. Sidonia Lacobrenieri-Hodge. Without further ado, I'll dive right into this. Madam Chair Lady, today marks, as you mentioned, the restart of the public handling of the National Ordinance on Higher Education, an ordinance that has been pending for quite some time, but one that is quite necessary when it comes to further regulating institutions at the tertiary level. During today's presentation, I will walk you through the history of higher education in St. Martin, the basic principles of the draft ordinance higher education, the outcome of consultations with relevant stakeholders, and an overview of the legal provisions within the draft national ordinance. On May 24, 2017, the Council of Ministers approved the Start Notitie related to the National Ordinance for Higher Education. To shape this ordinance, the Ministry engaged in discussions with various stakeholders. Discussions highlighted that there are indeed multiple solutions that could be suitable for St. Martin. The complexity of higher education means there is no single right way to address it. However, all stakeholders identified several core challenges for higher education related to St. Martin's social, economic, and educational systems. Our small scale was noted as our biggest challenge. Other significant challenges include the complexity of higher education in relation to global trends, the overall quality of education, as well as global economic and geopolitical realities. Despite these challenges, however, all stakeholders shared a common goal to strengthen higher education and create more opportunities for the people of St. Martin to achieve higher education degrees and certifications without leaving the island. Based on this, the Council of Ministers made the following policy decisions on higher education: align economic growth agenda and labor market needs directly with the educational agenda for higher education, acknowledge the realities of our ambitions considering the island's scale, the limited availability of tertiary education at USM, and financial constraints with an aim to grow steadily. Attract more foreign students to ensure financial sustainability and fill higher education programs. Invest in covering the core costs of higher education based on a maximum percentage to keep tuition fees relatively low and avoid shifting the financial burden to the study financing system. And organize quality assurance through specialized agencies to maximize international quality standards, saving manpower and allowing for investment in building local capacity. These policy decisions help to strengthen our higher education system and provide more opportunities for the people of St. Martin. Currently, higher education on the island operates based on agreements, contracts, or memoranda of understanding with individual institutions and programs. This results in insufficient control over higher education policy and its cohesion with other educational policies. There's no synergy, and the lack of legislation means that access to higher education, its quality, and efficient access to a variety of funding avenues are not guaranteed. With this draft ordinance, the government aims to strengthen the education system, improve access by creating more opportunities for students, and counter, at a basic level, the phenomenon of brain drain. Every student, regardless of financial means, should have the opportunity to pursue further education. At the same time, Madam Chair Lady, we must be cognizant of the challenges we face regarding our small scale, limited resources, and complexity of our education ecosystem. There's a very long road to travel before we can say that no student has to leave to further their studies. The coexistence of several international education systems makes progression and connection to further education even more difficult. The limited higher education options on the island hinder students who wish to continue their studies locally after secondary and secondary vocational education. More cohesion is needed in the education system on a whole to ensure smooth progression, which higher education regulations can provide. The government intends for this legislation to support the effective delivery of higher education that aligns with current economic and social developments, and that is flexible enough to adapt to future changes. Additionally, the legislation aims to coordinate the administrative relations between the country and educational institutions by establishing rules on their legal status and governance structure. The draft ordinance includes statutory regulations for how higher education must be organized by institutions, setting minimum requirements for the quality of education they provide. It also outlines the legal position, tasks, responsibilities, and funding of higher education organizations in St. Martin, regulating access to and quality of higher education and the legal status of students. Finally, the government must ensure the quality of diplomas issued so students can effectively and confidently enter the labor market. Students and employers need to trust the value of diplomas, which should have civil effect. Accreditation of programs ensures institutions maintain sufficient quality levels and meet predetermined requirements, giving diplomas real value on the local, regional, and international labor markets and for further education. The development of this draft national ordinance has benefited from consultations with the University of St. Martin and the American University of the Caribbean. Their input focused on several key areas, such as recognizing their current roles in advancing knowledge on St. Martin, fostering partnerships with diverse collaborators, advocating for accreditation diversity, enhancing institutional governance, and securing adequate program financing. In 2018, consultations were held, written queries were received, and responses were provided to USM and AUC regarding the draft national ordinance. USM's feedback focused on the specific provisions concerning government-funded institutions like themselves. Concerns such as the potential establishment of a public higher educational institution, sufficient funding assurances, the future need for institutional as well as program accreditation, flexibility in forming partnerships across sectors, adherence to rigorous quality standards, and the authority of the supervisory board were posed. These issues were thoroughly discussed and resolved. Similarly, AUC's queries focused on issues including the applicability of provisions to non-subsidized institutions like AUC, specific program inclusion such as the Doctor of Medicine program, prerequisites for higher education programs, and accessibility considerations for students without prior education on St. Martin. And responses to AUC's queries were provided in writing. In August 2023, a query from AUC was received regarding the Doctor of Medicine programs. MD programs are regulated in several articles of the draft ordinance and are all provisions therein that regulate master programs apply to MD programs. The draft ordinance regulates that access to a master program requires a bachelor's degree from either the Anglo-Saxon or European system. Thus, access to an MD program also requires a bachelor's degree from either the Anglo-Saxon or European system. Additionally, in that same month and year, USM had an opportunity to present their considerations regarding the draft national ordinance to the Committee of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports in Parliament. The feedback was noted and used to update the draft when necessary. My predecessor, as you outlined, Madam Chair Lady, returned to Parliament to begin the public meeting on the draft higher education law in September 2024 and delivered a comprehensive presentation on that law to Parliament once again. Following those deliberations between the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport and Parliament, the Department of Education and the SG of ECYS engaged in consultations with USM regarding points of concern which were tabled to Parliament regarding the draft law. A note of unwising was drafted taking into account concerns of USM, and the note of unwising was approved by the COM and presented to Parliament on September 18, 2024. The nota included adding definitions to terms which were unclear and linking the admission requirement for GED scores to the draft LBHAM Studiefinanciering to ensure alignment. A final draft of responses to questions posed by Parliament was presented to my predecessor. However, that was not handled as we're now restarting this law. Concerns regarding financial reporting, the naming of AUC and USM in the ordinance, and decisions regarding tuition were also brought forward. As it relates to financial reporting, the dates outlined in the draft ordinance align with the deadlines for requesting funding. The funding of education is determined by academic year, not calendar year. AUC and USM, Madam Chair Lady, are named in the current draft Memorie van Toelichting. For the sake of fairness, legal flexibility, and considering international best practices, they are not named in the draft ordinance. Concerns related to tuition are addressed in Article 8, Lit. 1 of the draft ordinance, which states that the amount of tuition can be subjected to regulations by national ordinance containing general measures, an LBHAM. It is at the government's discretion to establish this if deemed necessary, and if necessary, as a part of the legislation process to establish this, stakeholders will be always consulted. In the meantime, the draft roadmap for the implementation of this draft law has been delivered by the consultant and is currently under stakeholder review, and the national decree for the draft funding of higher education is being finalized. It's important to note that no consultation meetings were conducted with the National Institute for Professional Advancement, NIPA, as it operates within the framework of the National Ordinance on Secondary Vocational Education and Training, offering courses equivalent to International Standard Classification of Education Levels 3 and 4, distinct from higher education, which encompasses International Standard Classification of Education Levels 5 through 8. The government, as I mentioned, Madam Chair, recognizes the small scale and complexity of our current education system poses various challenges. Higher education on St. Martin has not yet reached its full potential, and setting overly ambitious goals can be counterproductive. Therefore, government has prioritized the creation of regulations for higher education. Based on the social and economic context and international and regional trends, the government has determined key guiding principles, including flexibility and minimum quality standards for national and international recognition of higher education. With these principles in mind, government is committed to making higher education accessible, high quality, and efficient. The draft ordinance is based on the following basic principles. Strengthening links with the labor market needs. St. Martin currently is not utilizing its full labor potential. There's a direct correlation between the level of education and success in the labor market. To address this, the government can establish rules to improve access to higher education. By enhancing the transition from secondary to tertiary education and fostering cooperation between these levels, we can reduce dropout rates and ensure more of our population attains higher education that aligns with labor market demands. Understanding the medium-term needs of the labor market is crucial for determining the training programs offered. These programs must address the economic and social needs of St. Martin, and institutions seeking funding must align their training offerings with these labor market needs as well. Ultimately, retaining talent within St. Martin requires that students graduate with relevant skills and qualifications that meet local demands. Second, there was no distinction between institutions of higher professional education and universities. In our current education system, progressing to higher levels is challenging for some students. Most secondary students are in preparatory secondary vocational education. To address this, we can expand both secondary and higher vocational education by ensuring smooth progression pathways. Given St. Martin's small scale, higher education institutions need flexibility in how they design and organize their programs. Therefore, the government has decided not to differentiate between higher professional education and university education. Institutions can choose whether to have their bachelor's or master's programs accredited at a higher vocational scientific level. This approach allows institutions to offer both types of education, maximizing intake from secondary and vocational education and easing the transition to higher education. To ensure a smooth flow in higher education, the government supports institutions that offer programs based on both the Anglo-Saxon and European systems. The Anglo-Saxon system used in the United States and the United Kingdom, and the European system prevalent in countries like the Netherlands, provide flexible pathways for students transitioning from secondary or vocational schools. Institutions can choose which system to use for their programs. For government-funded courses, it is essential to consider social needs and labor market demands. Instruction is generally provided in English or Dutch, but the draft national ordinance allows for other languages if they are relevant to the program. Using both the Anglo-Saxon and European systems also promotes international cooperation with institutions and countries that follow these models. Government is also committed to allowing variety in the higher education system, including the possibility of attracting or retaining private institutions. According to Article 11 of the Constitution of St. Martin, we maintain a dual system of higher education. Higher education in St. Martin thus comprises three types of institutions: private institutions, which are often profit-oriented and not funded by the government; government-funded institutions, which may or may not be profit-oriented; and public institutions maintained by the government through public law entities. This approach encourages economic diversification by being open to commercial institutions. If institutions do not receive government funding, they face fewer regulations. The minimum requirements for private institutions would then include the organization of and access to education, granting diplomas, and ensuring accreditation along with registration and information obligations. Government-funded institutions, on the other hand, must meet stricter requirements, especially regarding admission and education quality. If no institutions are funded and there's a significant social need for higher education, the government can step in to provide public higher education. However, given the capacity of the existing institution, this scenario is unlikely, but ensures that government can still provide higher education in extreme cases. It's crucial as well to note that the National Ordinance clarifies the meaning of higher education diplomas for all stakeholders: students, employers, and education institutions. The higher education diploma's social value should extend to local, regional, and international labor markets, as well as provide opportunities for further education. For instance, a recognized master's degree in law should grant access to the legal profession, highlighting the significance of government-recognized programs. Under the National Ordinance, only institutions with recognized study programs will be authorized to confer diplomas, titles, and degrees. This requirement will apply universally, including both government-funded and private institutions. Institutions will need to seek program accreditation, which will involve accreditation by a designated body. Accreditation will serve as a vital assurance of quality education. Recognized programs will be listed in a centralized higher education register, facilitating verification during application processes. This register will also detail the diplomas and degrees an institution is authorized to grant, ensuring transparency and authenticity in qualifications that are awarded. Ensuring institutions do not grant diplomas without recognized accreditation is crucial to safeguard against substandard education offerings at high cost. Any institution in St. Martin issuing diplomas, titles, or degrees without proper recognition and accreditation will be in violation of the law and will be subject to fines, underscoring the importance of regulatory adherence and quality assurance in higher education. Internationalization, partnerships with minimum requirements. The government supports international cooperation, especially considering St. Martin's scale. The draft National Ordinance enables such collaborations, allowing for joint programs where students can earn degrees from both a foreign institution and a St. Martin institution. In cases of joint study programs or specializations, legal protections are essential for students. The draft ordinance includes safeguards to ensure these cooperative arrangements protect students' rights. While participating in joint programs with foreign institutions, the St. Martin institution will remain accountable for ensuring compliance with the draft National Ordinance. This includes entering into detailed cooperation agreements with foreign partners, specifying educational content, degree conferral methods, student registration processes, program costs, and tuition fee responsibilities. Throughout joint programs, students' rights and obligations will be upheld, ensuring transparency and accountability in their educational journey. The draft National Ordinance in front of you today introduces funding guidelines aimed at sharing the cost burden of higher education between the government and institutions. Higher education is seen as a public asset, necessitating government financial support to guarantee accessibility and quality, while striving to provide equitable opportunities for more St. Martin students and mitigate brain drain. The government recognizes its financial limitations both presently and in the future. To ensure sustainability, the draft ordinance grants higher education providers flexibility in financing beyond government subsidies, contingent upon sound financial management. Institutions are empowered to invest, secure loans, and engage in commercial activities under the oversight of their boards. This includes offering specific products or services commercially, leveraging their organizational structure for economic purposes. Additionally, performance contracts can be established with government-funded institutions, linking funding to outcomes such as student success rates and institutional efficiency. This innovative approach allows for diversified investment in higher education, adapting to future needs. Moreover, the draft ordinance supports triangular cooperation between institutions, the business sector, and the government. This collaboration is beneficial for research initiatives that serve public and business interests, requiring joint funding. It encourages higher education institutions to act as knowledge partners in research collaborations, fostering innovation and addressing societal challenges beyond market capabilities. Furthermore, institutions are able to set higher tuition fees, particularly for international students, to enhance financial sustainability. This framework aims to foster a dynamic higher education sector that balances public responsibilities with financial autonomy, ensuring long-term viability and societal impact. The government acknowledges the critical role of innovation and technological advancements in society. Higher education serves as a key avenue for fostering creativity and innovation among students. Graduates are equipped to enhance the innovative capacity within professional fields and address significant societal challenges. The draft national ordinance includes provisions for experimentation, allowing institutions to pilot innovative policies aimed at enhancing educational quality. These experiments provide flexibility to swiftly adapt to evolving social demands and improve teaching effectiveness. This proactive approach supports continuous improvement in higher education to meet current and future societal needs. Quality assurance and the general duty of care of the institutions. The higher education institution bears responsibility for maintaining educational quality, as outlined in the draft national ordinance, which establishes a general duty of care. The government believes these institutions, as professional bodies, are best equipped to define and uphold quality standards in accordance with national and international norms. Rather than prescribing detailed standards, the ordinance outlines a broad duty of care, allowing the institution's board to interpret and enforce these standards responsibly. In government-funded institutions, the executive board assumes accountability to the supervisory board. Minimum requirements for the board of these institutions ensure governance and internal oversight are separate, adhering to the principles of the Corporate Governance Code and the two-tier supervisory board model. This model legally separates management responsibilities vested in the executive board from oversight duties that are entrusted to the supervisory board, each defined by specific statutory roles within the draft ordinance. In higher education, the student is at the heart of the educational experience, in all education, actually. Institutions not only deliver high-quality education, but also play a crucial role in shaping and nurturing the formation and growth of students. The draft national ordinance emphasizes that institutions must actively foster personal development and a sense of responsibility among students. This preparation is essential for students to effectively engage in St. Martin society, the wider Caribbean region, and globally. Moreover, institutions are mandated to promote knowledge dissemination for societal benefit and encourage lifelong learning. Education serves as the cornerstone of students' future careers. Transparent information about program content and quality assists students in selecting programs aligned with their capabilities, learning preferences, and career aspirations. Clear delineation of rights and responsibilities ensures students understand what is expected of them and what they are entitled to. Establishing these expectations enhances the likelihood of students successfully completing their studies. Given institutions autonomy in structuring education and setting admission criteria, it is imperative to safeguard students' legal rights. The draft ordinance therefore mandates that institutions establish comprehensive education and examination regulations for all programs. These regulations must outline program structures, procedural guidelines, and student rights and responsibilities concerning education and exams. Additionally, institutions are required to establish examination boards and appoint appeals boards to ensure fair and transparent assessment processes. Clarity regarding rights and responsibilities strengthens the relationship between students and institutions, fostering commitment and mutual engagement. Students, in turn, play an important role in enhancing institutional quality by participating in academic discourse and providing feedback on educational experiences. Participation in advisory bodies is crucial in this regard, facilitating student involvement in shaping educational development. This engagement enriches students' educational journey beyond the curriculum, empowering them to influence educational advancements within their institutions. The remaining slides, Madam Chair Lady, are going to provide some insight into the legal provisions that are regulated in specific chapters within the draft ordinance for higher education, which range from chapters 1 through 11. I'll begin with the legal provisions that you can find between chapters 1 through 5. Chapter 1, the definition and scope. Chapter 1 of the draft national ordinance provides definitions and specifies which chapters apply to public, government-funded, and non-funded institutions. It outlines the core tasks of higher education institutions, emphasizing the transfer of knowledge for societal benefit. According to the draft, institutions wishing to offer higher education in St. Martin must register, allowing for an understanding of its content and structure. The design also supports the financial sustainability of institutions by permitting investments, loans, and financial commitments. The institution's board is responsible for managing financial resources to ensure proper operation and continuity, allowing for the development of commercial activities, such as offering products or services. Chapter 2, General Provisions for Higher Education. Chapter 2 covers general provisions for higher education. This allows institutions to offer programs based on both the Anglo-Saxon and European systems, which can coexist within a single institution. Institutions may also offer programs outside these systems if they clearly benefit St. Martin's society. This chapter also details language options for instruction, required teaching competencies, the central register of recognized programs, program types and credits, entry requirements including recognition of foreign diplomas, examination conditions including the establishment of a board of examiners, and the awarding of degrees and titles. Chapter 3 outlines the essential accreditation and quality requirements, emphasizing the institution's responsibility for maintaining the quality of higher education. It details the designation of an accredited body through national decree and ministerial regulation, the validity of accreditation, and the recovery process following accreditation expiration or loss. Chapter 4 covers the management and organization of public and government-funded special institutions. It details the board of directors, including membership, qualifications, and the role of the president or rector magnificus. Articles 74 through 77 specify the board of directors' accountability to the supervisory board or board of trustees and outlines the procedures for appointment, dismissal, membership compatibility, and regulations by the supervisory board. This chapter also defines the qualifications, responsibilities, tasks, powers, and accountability to the ministry of the supervisory board. It addresses the organization and management of education, including regulations for the Dean of Academic Affairs, department heads, managers of education, academic board, and the participation of faculty, students, and staff in education management, including a complaint committee. Article 90 outlines the personnel policy and legal position of staff, allowing the institution to determine these aspects. Finally, this chapter includes provisions for students' rights and registration. Chapter 5 displays information about the funding for higher education programs through subsidies. It includes examinations executed by the Education Inspectorate, the method of calculation of government contributions under the auspices of the ministry, the conditions attached to public funding, the 4-year strategic plan, the institutional budget, the annual report and annual financial report, financial auditing, the withdrawal of funding, amendments and payment settlements, and consultation with boards, faculty, staff, and students. The following slide provides information about chapters 6 through 8 in the higher education law on legal provisions. Chapter 6 handles the topic of supervision of the draft ordinance, which provides for ministerial powers regarding the supervision of the institution, legal compliance, institutional and programmatic developments, the Education Inspectorate, as well as obligations to provide information. It also stipulates the responsibilities to the Minister of the Supervisory Board and the measures in place in the case of failure to approve a budget. Chapter 7 contains special provisions for public institutions of higher education, which provides for ministerial powers to establish a public institution of higher education, structural formation, the institutional boards and its composition, and other bodies of consultation, as well as the establishment and dismissal of members of the supervisory board, the approval of budget and protocol, and measures to be taken in case of failure to approve a budget. Chapter 8 provides special provisions for public and subsidized institutions, such as protocol and academic offerings, needs assessments, and the sufficiency and continuation of providing academic programs in accordance with national needs. This chapter also includes stipulations related to ministerial advice on the Education Inspectorate, the lapsing of ministerial consent, ministerial powers over an academic program, rules on cooperation between St. Martin and foreign institutions, the scope for innovation and pilot programs, and the levying of fees and tuition protocol and ministerial withdrawal of consent. Chapters 9 through 11 cover special provisions for private institutions, penal provisions, and transitional and final provisions. Those chapters also include, as I mentioned, the special provisions then for those subjects broken down into detail then via the articles. And then that would then bring me, Madam Chair Lady, to the end of my presentation. I look forward to questions from the members of Parliament, and thank you for the time.
Minister Gums, thank you very much for your presentation on the draft law for higher education. Members of Parliament, of course, now is your opportunity to ask questions to the Minister. And a reminder that the allotted speaking time is 20 minutes in the first round and 10 minutes in the second round. I also remind you that this is a public meeting, and as such, in order to speak on the topic, you would have to indicate that on the speakers list available here at the desk. So I await and I give those desirous of speaking the opportunity to indicate this on the sheet here for this purpose. I give the floor to the first speaker on this draft ordinance, and that is MP Veronica Janssen-Webster. MP Janssen, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning to my colleagues in Parliament. Good morning to the people in the Tribune and our listening viewers, and also welcome to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport and her support staff. Thank you very much, Minister, for coming to give us this presentation. It is quite a lot. I think it's 260-something pages of the document that we received, legislation. However, just based on what I could pick up from your presentation via you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the Minister regarding the accreditation in Article 68.3. It is mentioned that the accreditatie van een opleiding and by under sorry, I have to read it from this one. Article 69.3, 68.3. Het instellingsbestuur vraagt accreditatie van een opleiding en bij een door de minister erkend accreditatieorgaan. So you have a accreditation institution that is acknowledged by the minister. So my question is, through you, Madam Chair, does the minister have a list of accreditation institutions already? And I know that, so my second question, I know that there is an initiative to start a medical school in St. Martin tied to the Dominican Republic. During my previous tenure, I also visited that school in the Dominican Republic with the people from St. Martin who want to start it. Now, seeing that we have the big registration issues for medical professionals who do not study in the Netherlands, I was wondering if the minister already has some kind of an accreditation with the Dominican Republic or anything in that sense. So it all ties into, because the minister determines if the accreditation institution is valid, what accreditation institutions are already listed that are considered valid. That's the main question. And then specifically looking at the Dominican Republic, is a school like that that is then from the Dominican Republic, and not limited to the Dominican Republic, but also other Latin countries, will those also be accredited? Are they also part of the list? Through you, Madam Chair, those are my two questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Veronica Janssen-Webster. I see MP Lewis heading to the desk to indicate his desire to speak. I await for him to do that and then give him the floor. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members of Parliament, the Honorable Minister of ECYS and her support staff, and members in the Tribune, the viewing and listening public. I would first off would like to make a statement, because when I'm listening to anything from the Minister of ECYS or the Minister of Justice, it seems that every single thing that a former minister does or has done, there's an issue. But I'm here to say, and I'll say it again, the former minister, be it my person, had 2 portfolios for nearly 7 months, and I did my utmost best within those 7 months. Whether this initiative or meetings that we had past October or September, remember, government changed in November. However, as former Minister of ECYS acting, and who was also busy with the draft on higher education, this was also a pending document that I too inherited when I became the acting Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport. First of all, through you, Madam Chair, the draft law stipulates or refers to the academic year, whereas all prior arrangements up to 2023 using subsidy ordinance impact on USM process and reporting to various government bodies for taxes, payroll deductions, budgets. 2, tuition restrictions negative to the institution in that funding by government is not 100%. The institution needs the tuition revenue stream to compensate for the government's 60% limit of funding. Naming USM and AUC can easily be added as the existing accepted institutions. This practice can be seen in the Dutch law on higher education. Note of definitions. Why was the academic year changed to September 1st through August 31st? Prior change and ministerial decrees considered the academic year as August 1st through July 31st. Were discussions held with the existing institutions on the proposed changes, considering the ordinance on the which they are currently funded before placed in the draft? Or was it a decision made and mandated? Once approved, what is the transition period to allow existing institutions to adhere to the requirements? Has it been specifically stipulated? The question on the first point would be, was impact considered and discussed? That will be all for now, Madam Chair, as we continue this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Lewis. Members of Parliament continue to sign in to speak, and I await the next MP. I give the floor to MP De Wever. MP De Wever, you have the floor.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and thank you to the Minister and her team for this. But I just want to say that this has been a long time coming. So I know it's been a little bit, how do you say, impatient for some of us that have been here before. And the fact that, you know, whenever we have our orientation, Dr. Adain Lynch comes in here and says, don't take things personally. It's just about getting the work done. I don't think anyone's trying to single out anyone. I believe that this has been, you know, in our preparation, this has been the 4th time that this has come to Parliament. So I'm actually glad that we're in a position where we can even come back and have the first round started again. But I just wanted to say that as a reminder. You know, what comes up every time we talk about this legislation is the fact that, you know, we're constantly referencing AUC and USM, University of St. Martin and American University of the Caribbean. And if you compare it to the rest of the Dutch islands, they have their universities listed in it. And so I just wanted to see why they're not listed in it, just for clarification's purposes. And also, I do ask this all the time whenever this comes up, is the role that NEPA plays here, just so that we have an understanding of it. Again, I always like to remind that this is a public forum here. We're discussing things that matter to everyone else as well. And it's just to make sure that we understand when we're referring to AUC and USM, that we understand where NEPA falls into it. Because, of course, it's not a secret that you know, there's so many changes happening in NEPA as well, and it's a fantastic school because we have actually a lot of our nurses there, but just the role that they play in this legislation so that everyone understands it. And that is pretty much it for now. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP De Wever. I continue and I give the floor to MP Doran. MP Doran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon to the Minister, the support staff, my colleagues, and everyone that is tuned in. Madam Chair, I too would like to join along the lines of MP De Wever in the sense of, I know that this has been a long time coming. I would like to thank each and every one that worked on this, so dating back to the first minister, come to this minister, and also to the support staff and those in the ministry. I know that there's been a lot of back and forth discussions as to why yes, why no. One of my concerns has always been, I feel that we underuse NEPA, and I believe that that is an institution that has a lot of potential. So I would like to know the thoughts of the ministry in terms of, I understand that the level that is accredited now or even recognized may not be up to the standards that the minister just mentioned with regards to this law, but what are we doing to bring it to that next level? Because say one, say two, we are 16 square miles, but I believe that there's a lot of potential in that institution, and I don't want us to underuse something that can be great. So I would like to know, through you, Madam Chair, what are the thoughts in terms of enhancing the quality or or investing more in NEPA to see what they can produce in order for us to enhance our education? I look forward to that response before I move on to the further questions. Thank you for the opportunity once again.
Thank you, MP Doran. I now give the floor to MP Roseburg. MP Roseburg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Blessed afternoon to everyone present here today, to the ones tuned in online, and a special welcome to the Minister and her support staff. Based on what my colleagues have brought forward, I just would like to give my sentiments in regards to the legislation in front of us. I personally do not agree, through you, Madam Chair, to mention specific institutes in the articles itself, because the law, the institutions can change, more institutions can be added, and I do believe, and I think the last time when we were here discussing this topic, I made it clear as well that it can be mentioned in the Memorie van Toelichting. The minister has done that, and I do believe that that is sufficient, because you want to avoid that certain institutions are mentioned, others are not mentioned, and the goal is for the institutions, all that will be added now and in the future, to get the same fair chances. So if it is to waarborg the current institutions, it has been done in my humble legal opinion through the Memorie van Toelichting. I'm happy that we're here now, and I hope we can come to the finalization of the legislation so that we can it can finally be in effect. That's my contribution for now.
Thank you, MP Roseburg. I continue with the list of members of parliament as I give the floor to MP La Cruz. MP La Cruz, you have the floor.
A blessed afternoon, Madam Chair Lady Griffier, once again to the Minister and her support staff, those in the tribute, my fellow colleagues, those watching and listening through social media. Madam Chair Lady, and I'll echo what my fellow member of parliament mentioned, because in the previous meeting we already made those comments, and it is exactly that, making sure that every university, but also encouraging other universities to come here, mentioning a specific university. And even though I understand the sentiment that this is the University of St. Martin, this is our university, I still think that it should be done in a way that it doesn't turn off others. But again, I do understand that was a point, Then in reference to an idea that we already discussed before, that I already mentioned, was, for example, government-owned companies giving the possibility for scholarships and, to be able to study on a higher level within the company itself, using the existing universities that we have. Something came to my attention this morning that the NEPA gives a nursing course, and the medical and the university, the SMMC, so the hospital, also gives a course. But if you are working in the hospital, you cannot take the course from NEPA. So I'd like the minister to look into that, because then it's a kick-off to continue studying. Then in the legislation itself, on page 7, I love this point, and I just wanted to highlight this one point, which is extremely important, which is the uitgangspunt van de wettelijke stelsel, page 7, sturen en aansluiting arbeidsmarktbehoeftes. So paying attention that whatever universities we have, whatever is being given here, that it coincides with what we are looking for and need, and again, it goes down to mention concerning foreigners working, coming in and being hired by the local businesses, because they say they lack the education. So if the minister is already paying attention to that, I think that is a very, very good point, and I see it here. So I wanted to bring that to light, because a lot of people keep saying, hey, yeah, they don't hire us, but we don't get a chance. So there's the opportunity. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I now continue, and I give the floor to MP Irian. MP Irian, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Kafir, colleagues, Honorable Minister, and her support staff. Minister, Madam Chair, I would also like to thank, as my colleague mentioned before, all those that have contributed to getting us to this point, and the staff of the ministry who have been working on this, the staff of USM, and the students that have been fighting for this for a very, very long time. I do have a couple of questions, though. The minister, Madam Chair, and I attended a conference the other day, and I think we both have the same, let's say, passion for technology. And what I would like to know is what measures will be or are included in this legislation to support technological advancement and innovation in the education system. Because what we see is, as Madam Chair, the minister, I know for sure knows this, technology advances very quickly, typically a lot faster than even our legislation. And I would like to make sure that we have some sort of mechanisms idea to make sure that we are able to keep up, at the very least, keep up with technology in terms of how are we going to incorporate, let's say, AI in the future, and not be limited to what we decided on in 2025. And I believe that's something that the minister for sure can see herself in. If or how will the government contribute to funding higher education institutions? Yes, we have one now, but will they be doing it? How they'll be doing it in the future? And what type of financial requirements will or must the institution meet? Are there any conditions attached to public funding? And let's say, how would the compliance be monitored? How will institutions be penalized if they fail to meet the accreditation or quality of standards of the legislation? And lastly, what is the timeline for the implementation of the law, and how will it be enforced to ensure compliance? And it was previously mentioned before, the concerns about NEPA, but not only NEPA, we have every other, today I see there's an ad for a director of the airport, a director of SFV, cadastre. We are now busy building medical center that's going to need a lot more staff. So timeline is important, and I would love to see how we make sure that we're able to funnel persons, local persons, to be able to fill these roles in the future and make sure that the demand comes locally first for these institutions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Irian. I continue and I give the floor to MP Waver. MP Waver, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to the Honorable Minister, support staff, my colleagues here, those present in the Tribune, those listening via whichever media. First of all, I would also like to echo what my fellow MPs mentioned, that it has been a long time coming, and I think this is now the time to actually go past the finish line and stop, digressing, and we need to progress. It was also mentioned before, and that's something of mine that's a concern in a sense that we don't make the same mistakes. I think when we look at NEPA as well, one of the things that we know about NEPA is the nursing courses, and I think they're doing a really good job. But then we have to look at the accreditation of that course, because I think we accept it here on St. Martin, and I think it's on a high level. But if such a nurse wants to go elsewhere to further their course, they would have to then start over. So those are things to look at when we are doing the law for higher education, and also making sure, I think what my fellow colleagues said before me, the accountability, and making sure, because we're in the House of Parliament and the country of St. Martin has a lot of laws in place, but it's all about enforcing these laws when we reach to that point. Thank you, Madam Chair. That'll be all for now.
Thank you, MP Waver. I now give the floor to MP Kotai. MP Kotai, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to all, to the Minister and her staff, my colleagues, and those tuning in via online, and those in the Tribune as well. Just to touch base on the stipulation of accreditation bodies, will this include the Dutch body, NVAO, which is the Nederlands-Vlaamse Accreditatieorganisatie? Both Curaçao and Aruban governments accepts that body. So I would just like to know if NVAO would be acceptable here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Kotai. MP Peterson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. This law has been pending for a while, since 2023, actually. I remember being part of a very lengthy presentation here with the then minister to finally get this going. So I'm glad that after 2 years, we're finally here. I don't think there's too much to debate or belabor on the subject. I thank the minister for her presentation, and I'll await the vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Peterson. I now give the floor to MP Labega.
Good morning, good afternoon. Madam Chair, good afternoon to my fellow colleagues. Good afternoon to the Minister of ECYS and her support staff. I thank the Minister for her presentation here today. Especially like the part where it talked about the joint programs and exchange programs that the ministry is looking into. I do believe that it's very important for our students and young professionals to get experience off of St. Martin. A lot of times you hear parents saying, finish school and get off of the island. But it can't be get off of the island forever. It has to be get off of the island, experience different cultures, meet different people, see how the world outside of St. Martin works, and come back to St. Martin to contribute. I myself am a product of that. I had the opportunity to go to elementary school in St. Martin in the States, as well as college, and that has greatly shaped the way I see things, the way I see the world, etc. And right after college, you came straight back to St. Martin. So it goes to the point where one of my fellow colleagues stated that you hear a lot of times that we're not qualified. So I do look forward to hearing more about this exchange program in some of the countries or some of the states or wherever that our students will have the opportunity to go learn and ultimately come back to St. Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Labega. Members of Parliament, these are the members who indicated their desire to speak. Those members have spoken. I'm going to adjourn for 3 minutes to to caucus with the minister on the continuation of this meeting. Meeting adjourned for 3 minutes. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. After a brief adjournment and a caucus with the Minister regarding providing the answers to the questions as posed by members of Parliament, the Minister would have been actually able in the next hour and a half. However, we do have another meeting this afternoon. So I've asked the Minister to then give her next